tonight's 16th Congressional District Primary Forum, hosted by the Los Altos Institution, the world's first high school think tank run and oriented towards high school students. My name is Travis Hodges, and I am the Chief Deputy Director here at Los Altos, as well as the National President of the American Youth Association.
And I'm Julian, Student Body President at Palo Alto High School and a Research Assistant at the Hoover Institution. Tonight, we'll hear from 6 candidates running for California's 16th Congressional seat, open for the first time in 3 decades, on why they want to represent this district.
This event also marks history, being the first congressional primary debate in American history organized and hosted by high school students. This shows the impact and the increasing presence that young people have had in our political system, and although many of us here may not be able to vote, we hold a voice in our democracy. Yet, our democracy is fragile. Initially, this event was meant to be hosted in front of a live audience of hundreds of voters and community members. However, due to recent rising tension within our community, we've had to relocate to this location with only media and the candidates. At the Los Altos Institution, we aim to empower young people across the globe to pursue high-level research, but also to protect democratic systems. We are grateful to the press, and especially to all the candidates present here today, for coming here to this event and supporting our mission. You've shown that you both care about our democracy and the voices of young people in this district. Another special thank you goes to the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation and the City of Los Altos for letting us use this historic venue, the Neutra House, on such short notice. With that, let's introduce the candidates. Climate investor Joby Bernstein, tech entrepreneur and father Peter Dixon, council member, educator, and parent Julie Lythcott-Haims, women's rights attorney Ahmed Mostafa, financial management VP Peter Ohtaki, and Palo Alto City Council member and entrepreneur Tanaka. We are also joined here today by Councilmember Rishi Kumar. Thank you for joining us tonight, and let's begin. Candidates, you will each have 60 seconds to answer the following prompt. As a candidate for California's 16th Congressional District, please introduce yourself and share with voters why you're passionate about representing this district. For order, we will start with Councilmember Lythcott-Haims and make our way down. For the next question, we'll start with Mr. Bernstein and work our way down, and so on and so forth. Any questions? No, thank you so much. Councilmember Lythcott-Haims, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the Los Altos Institution and Travis and Julian and Maulik and anyone else who's had anything to do with this groundbreaking historic opportunity, and to my fellow candidates for choosing to come, because not all did, and I think it's clear that a number of us respect the youth vote and youth perspective on democracy and the future of America, so thank you for doing this. I know I've used up half my time thanking you. I'm a former Stanford dean, I'll start there. I advocated for youth, I have advocated for youth for much of my career, and I'm running because the youth of America have been sold a bill of goods that doesn't add up. Between climate change, gun violence, the cost of living, particularly the cost of housing and their student loans, reproductive freedom on the line, bodily autonomy on the line, their mental health is harmed, and it's not their fault. I'm running to restore America's promise to its youth that you will thrive in your young adulthood. I think it's our obligation as your elders to ensure that it's true. That's why I'm running.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein?
My name is Joby Bernstein. I'm 28 years old, I'm ambitious, and I'm running to be your next congressman. I'm running because I've watched the terrible effects climate change has had in our district, from wildfires to droughts. I'm running because I've watched the smartest minds come here from abroad only to be kicked out because they did not win a lottery. And I'm running because I've seen an education system that has become too far out of reach for too many, from preschool to college. We are losing what is most vital to us, our environment, our children's future, and our friends. However, I know what we can accomplish. I want every generation to see the natural beauty of this state, like I experienced in my first backpacking trip in the Sequoias. I want everyone to be inspired by their teachers, like they've inspired me to aim for my dreams. And I want everyone to see the essence of American innovation from immigrants who move here. Like you, I'm a doer, a self-starter, and an innovator who is going to go to Congress not to fight, but to make things right.
Thank you. Mayor Ohtaki.
Thank you. Thank you to the Los Altos Institution. I'm Peter Ohtaki, and I'm running because I'm fed up that Congress is broken. Congress is so polarized that each party wants to make the other party look bad rather than to solve the major issues facing our nation right now. Many of the other candidates are career politicians who toe the party line and dare not reach over across the aisle and seek compromise or seek solutions. I grew up here in Silicon Valley. I went to Woodside High School, and Silicon Valley reinvents itself. And it does that because it doesn't let ideology stop innovative solutions. And that's the type of leadership that we need in Congress. As I did as Menlo Park mayor, and I hope to do so in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ohtaki. Major Dixon.
I'm Peter Dixon, and I'm running for U.S. Congress to be the next member of Congress from this district, because exactly what these students are doing here, organizing the first congressional primary in U.S. history organized by high school students. Why is that so important? It's so important because the big issues of our time are being decided right now. Democracy is on the line right now in the next 2 years. Climate change, we have 6 years to mitigate the worst effects of climate change. And so this is all happening right now. We need a member of Congress who can go to Capitol Hill and can answer 3 questions. How do we get the money that we need to tackle these big problems? How do we get on the right committees to do that? Because being a member of Congress, shockingly, is actually not enough. And then how do we work in a cross-partisan way to get those things done? Because Congress and our country are deeply divided. And how do we repair those rifts? These are the questions that need to be answered right now.
Thank you, Major. Mr. Mostafa.
Hi, my name is Ahmed Mostafa, and I'm running for Congress to ensure that the voices of those who have been silenced and sidelined can echo in the halls of Congress. You know, a few years ago, my grandfather came to visit me, and I found him on my bed presenting with stroke-like symptoms. And he ended up having to ask the question, my wife or children in debt? And he said, I'm going to walk out of this hospital. And nobody should ask themselves that question. That is essential. That is why I'm running for Congress. Nobody should sleep on the streets because they're in a mental health crisis. And I'm fighting for you. I am so proud of you all because you are our next generation. You are our leaders of tomorrow. And I will stand up for you and ensure that when you come back here, after graduating, that you can afford to live here. You know, the question is, can you afford a $5,000 a month studio in the Bay just to be in the same place that you grew up? I will not stop fighting that you can live in the same place that you grew up in. And that is a challenge today. So thank you.
Councilmember Tanaka.
Hi, I'm Greg Tanaka, member of the Palo City Council, also entrepreneur. Also want to thank the Los Altos Institution for holding this forum. You know, I think so often, if you look at who actually votes, it's not the youth, it's the much older people. But a lot of the decisions we make, whether it's on council or Congress, is actually for people your age. So I applaud you guys for doing this. There are 3 reasons why I vote, why I'm running. So first reason is environment. It's an existential crisis. You know, like the Bay is forecasted to rise 10 feet. And yet very few people are willing to do what it takes. So like, for instance, I think I'm the only one who didn't drive here, right? Was that correct? I think the rest of you drive. So I took my skateboard here because I'm trying to be environmentally friendly. So I think that's really important to walk the talk. Also, transparent emissions. So if you come from school like in Palo Alto, Los Altos, you have to get 2 more points than everyone else. So there should be transparent emissions so that it's clear as to why you got admitted to college or not. And last thing is, the United States used to be #1 in R&D, but we're falling behind. If you look at our education to the doctor funding, it's dropping, and we need to correct that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Kumar.
Good evening, everybody. It's a delight to be here. And thank you for bringing this, the dream team together. And I was a Lone Ranger running in this race for a few years. And I'm so excited to have some company today. And it's actually a numbers game. You know, you have to be top 2. That's the way it plays out. And we have done it twice. And when you look at the numbers, we have spent about $1.7 million in this race. And our ticket TikTok videos went to 1.4 million. And then you look at the number of doors we knocked, 150,000 doors. And because we had 2,000 interns over the last few years, they came from every part of the country. I stand for the Green New Deal. I stand for climate change, applied technology. I stand for Medicare for all. We did 42%, 127,000 votes total we have received in the district. And we are polling number 1, and we are here to win. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, everyone. Let's start our policy questions with the economy. Candidates, you will have 45 seconds to answer the following question. How do you plan to support small businesses to ensure their resilience and growth?
Mr. Bernstein, we'll start with you.
Awesome. Small business was what defines our economy. If you look at the majority of workers in this country work for small businesses, and ensuring that we have the right policies to support them is paramount and it's not talked about enough. Things that need to get done first. Right now there are about 9.2 million unfilled jobs. Many of those are in small businesses and they have trouble hiring people. 2 reasons why. One is education. We're not training people to be able to fill the jobs we need. There are 65,000 openings for HVAC workers, 225,000 openings for plumbers. If we want to actually fill these jobs, we need to be training people. And the second part is immigration. Legal immigration has not been touched in this country since 1986. It's time to fix it and time to ensure that talent can stay here.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Mayor Ohtaki?
Thank you. So as Mayor of Menlo Park, I was very proud to have redeveloped in our downtown area. So you may recall El Camino had empty car dealerships, and we rezoned all of that, and what we now have is transit-oriented housing and development, which brings new customers to support our businesses downtown. We modified our codes and made our city more responsive to support small businesses. We also created a whole innovation zone that was net zero friendly with housing on the Bayfront side to encourage all of the various companies that were growing within Menlo Park and helping them with that. In addition, what we've done is, and what we need to do, is to control rising crime that has affecting and putting businesses out of business.
No worries. Thank you, Mayor. Major Dixon?
So I founded a technology company and I built it, bootstrapped it over the course of 10 years. It grew it from just myself to over 100 people, supporting over 100 families. And that experience is tremendously transformative, going through that and understanding what it takes, lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how you're going to meet payroll. And you really understand the effects of some of the regulations that we deal with. And so going through that in a smart way to clean some of that up, I think about things like, and this sounds small, but R&D tax credits. Instead of getting them up front, you have to spread them over years now. That's been crushing to a bunch of the startups in our ecosystem.
Thank you, Major. Mr. Mostafa?
Yeah, small businesses are the backbone of our economy. And even in Silicon Valley, the very backbone of how these companies have started are small businesses. They are our startup companies. So we must continue to support small businesses in manners where they can succeed and compete. And this is going to be especially crucial in the new age of AI and technology. We cannot gatekeep these technologies with the big companies. We need people who have tech expertise. And I'm the only one here who has worked at a big tech company in the last 5 years. And so I've worked on dealing with AI and the harms that arise from AI, and I know how to ensure that we can ensure that our small businesses can compete with these bigger entities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mostafa. Councilmember Tanaka?
Yeah, I've been a serial entrepreneur, so I've started many startups, and it's the hardest thing you can do in your life. It's crazy hard. The odds are against you. It's hard to raise money. It's hard to hire. It's hard to compete against guys like Google. And as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a founder CEO, the amount of regulation, the amount of red tape, it's absolutely oppressive. So definitely we need to do some cleanup with the code. We need to make it easier because small business, are the lifeblood of this country. A big portion of the S&P 500 comes from companies that were once startups. And so one of the things I've been promoting, and one of the things I think we should do even on a federal level, is we all know there's a lot of empty commercial buildings, a lot of empty office buildings. So we should actually offer basically low rent for startups, so that they could grow and have a chance.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Kumar?
Yes, so I invite you to visit my website, rishikumar.com, and go to the section which is called Stories of a Maverick, and you will find the story about what we did with small businesses. Saratoga downtown is very quaint and not so much foot traffic. So when I was volunteering with the chamber in defining their social media strategy, I said, why don't we do something fun here to bring in our people, our families, to downtown. So we launched something which was called Saratoga's Got Talent. And there are still videos out there on YouTube. Go find it. They're fun videos. And we actually brought in foot traffic, and we rejuvenated our downtown. So it's all about taking actions, running coding programs, teaching the youth, empowering them with technology, with ChatGPT, training them. So that's what we have done. Thank you.
Councilmember Lythcott-Haims?
Thank you. As a Palo Alto City Council member, I sponsored an event called Young Minds Celebrated to give youth in Palo Alto the opportunity to share an idea, something they're passionate about, just on a street corner in front of a cafe. It was a way to center them and say, you matter, your ideas matter, your dreams matter, let's create the opportunity for you to talk about it in this city where we're so hyper-focused on achievement in a very narrow sense. And it was at that event that I met rising gastronomers, a young culinary artist who is in 8th grade. I think more kids need to know how to start a business. We ought to be teaching that in high schools across America. More kids ought to know about the opportunity to go to trade school where they can really level up their skills. And we ought to be considering dealing with vacancies in our storefronts by creating vacancy taxes and perhaps opportunity zones for micro businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. So our next question, candidates, you have 45 seconds to answer the following question. How do you plan on leveraging federal resources to invest in infrastructure projects within this district? And as a reminder, we'll have a 5-second grace period before one of the moderators will cut you off. Sorry. So, Mayor Ohtaki, you're first.
So one of the biggest infrastructure needs that we have on the peninsula is transportation. We have we rely on a 160-year-old railroad line that goes from San Francisco to San Jose. There's no mass transit connections that go east to west. We've been trying for 20 years to get a crossing that connects BART in the East Bay to Caltrain on the peninsula, but it's not been able to get funded. The federal infrastructure bill that passed, $1.2 trillion, was a great opportunity for us to get the funding we need for that. Our congressional representative needs to fight for funding for transportation infrastructure.
Thank you, Mayor. Major Dixon.
So I think what will surprise most of the viewers, most of the high school students watching, will surprise me, and I think many of the folks in the district, is that when you look at the federal government and what's available, 52% of the discretionary taxpayer dollar actually goes into the defense spend. So when we talk about where to free up resources and how to spend it, that's where it comes from. Where should it be going? Well, one, if you look at the available space around here, it's on the military bases that were abandoned 20 or 30 years ago. Moffett Field is a great example of that. It's 1,500 acres of available space that needs to be transformed to tackle the #1 issue for this district, which is housing.
Thank you, Major. Mr. Mostafa.
Well, it's Mostafa.
Apologies.
No, it's okay. So we must ensure that our earmarks, the funds that we get back in our society actually goes to the people and goes to services that are oriented for those of us who are suffering. And so just like Peter said, we need some infrastructure, but we also need to go beyond that. We need to invest in a lot of the nonprofits that are working towards our health services to ensure that nobody, has to suffer from a health crisis. We need to ensure that it goes to our environment. Just a few years ago, we saw the orange skies up in the air. And that is a direct result of climate change. So we need to have strong investments in green technology.
Thank you, Mr. Mostafa. Councilmember Tanaka.
Yeah, this is actually my top issue. So if you go to my website, greattanaka.org, on the very homepage is my policy of underground encountering. So if you go to just about anywhere else in the world with land values as high as what we have in our area, you'll see that mass transit is undergrounded. If you underground caltrain just in Palo Alto alone, that would free up 60 acres of land. So it's not every day you actually create land. Plus you cut down the suicides, the traffic jams, accidents, pollution, noise, all that kind of stuff. And you can actually pay for it by capturing the value above. So as you monetize the land above by building, you can actually use that funds to underground it. And it's a lot more efficient to do it for all the cities from Santa Clara to San Francisco. And so I think by doing this, this will create affordable housing opportunities for our youth. So I think it's a very important policy that we move forward.
Greg, do you have a cost estimate on that?
I do, but I'm out of time.
Candidates, you are not allowed to ask each other questions.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember.
Yeah, so go to my website, rishikumar.com/housing, rishikumar.com/traffic. We have a vision plan. And we need a massive investment in infrastructure here, which hasn't happened for decades. And we have fallen behind. The venture capital investors are moving to Miami. The entrepreneurs are going to Austin. And we are losing people. There's an exodus going on. And the revenue is shrinking. 45% of California's revenue comes from the tech world here. And we have to protect that. So we need a plan for housing, traffic, homelessness, for water. We have to build housing, but it comes from a proper urban plan. We got to do it right. We cannot put housing anywhere and everywhere. So we have a vision plan on my website. Please go check it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Finance.
Thank you. When we talk about leveraging federal resources, we have to ask ourselves, how does the Fed get money in the first place? The federal government gets money by raising taxes. And I think it's time we seriously address the fact that the wealthiest in this nation are not paying their fair share. With additional dollars available in the federal budget, I absolutely agree. We've got to bring money home to this district for housing. The lack of housing at all levels, the lack of affordable housing is probably the greatest challenge facing our district. I'd like to bring dollars home in the form of more vouchers for low-income families to live in opportunity zones, which our communities are, dollars for extremely low-income housing to be built, and dollars for things like Project Homekey, which help unhoused people get off the streets and into safe, supportive shelter.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Bernstein.
A lot of people listening online probably work in venture capital. A lot of high school students might want to work in VC one day. What people don't know, though, is that the federal government is basically the largest VC firm that exists in the world. If you look at just the Department of Energy and their loan program office, they have $250 billion of spending power right now. $250 billion that can go to this district. Right now, red states are crushing it and getting a majority of the money. It is time to turn the tides on that. It is time to put people in office who know how to fill out the LPO and OSED forms and ensure that startups in this district can get the money they need from the government to push our innovation forward.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein.
Candidates, this is a quick reminder that all of you must remain seated when answering questions. You will have 45 seconds to answer the following question. In light of recent economic challenges posed by inflation and an increasing cost of living, what specific steps would you take, if elected, to ease the financial burdens experienced by Americans right now? Dixon, you may begin.
It comes back to housing. If you look at cost of living around here, restaurants closing early, I think a lot of people that we grew up with moving away because they recognize that the American dream is never going to be here for them. We talk about startups. A lot of startups around here are going remote now because it's just too expensive to have the Silicon Valley dream be here. And so housing has to be at the forefront of that. Vouchers is extremely important, as you said. I agree with that. And then taking advantage, as I was talking about, of the public space that we do have available. For our district, it's Moffett Field. There's 16 other military bases in the area. That's where you put tens of thousands of housing units that can be phenomenal, good, owned housing units and create a community there so that we're not just nibbling around the edges of housing, we're dealing with it in a meaningful way.
Thank you, Major. Mr. Mostafa.
Yeah, we need a human rights economy. And that first starts with ensuring that we have a good housing supply. So we need to increase the supply of housing and use both areas in public lands and unoccupied buildings to have more housing available for people. And recognize that it's an intersectional problem as well. Not just for the unhoused, but also for us, regular Americans, as well as for victims and survivors of domestic violence who have to go from women's shelter to women's shelter. We need to have Medicare for all, which is cheaper than our current healthcare system, student loan reform to ensure that nobody like me, education saved my life, but I was at one point $230,000 in debt. And so nobody should suffer that, so we need to eliminate student loans and ensure that public education is free.
Thank you, Mr. Mostafa. Councilmember Tanaka.
Yeah, the problem with the cost of living really has to do with inflation. So what the government has done over the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or so, has printed money like crazy. We have, if you look at the money supply, it's grown trillions, right? Look at the deficit, the debt, any way you look at it, it's just absolutely terrible. So the runaway inflation is not helping because all that is doing is reallocating the economic pie from one group to another. And it's incredibly divisive. Instead, what we should be doing is focus on growing the pie, making the pie bigger for everyone. And the way we do that is by increasing the production in our country, which is by increasing the education here, by increasing the R&D spend, by increasing the amount of entrepreneurship. That's how we grow that economic pie. We don't grow it by printing more money. All we do is cause a lot of hardships, especially for the people on the bottom.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Kumar.
Yes, so rishikumar.com/inflation, we have a plan there to address the economic woes that we are currently going through. And when you look at taxes, taxes are basically wasted tax dollars. So we need to optimize how we are raising this money from people, and we got to give it back to people. And when it comes to inflation, that's been the biggest challenge over the last few years. Unfortunately, I have a very important meeting that I have to go to. So I'm sorry, I have to leave from this. I really appreciate all of you organizing this. It's been a pleasure to meet you all. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Kumar. We appreciate your attendance today. On to the next question. We will be talking about foreign
I'm
policy.
sorry, some of us haven't answered.
Oh, my apologies.
No,
Sorry.
it's
The order's a little bit weird.
Let's have the, council.
Yeah, we'll pause for a minute, gather our thoughts. All the best, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your night. Give us unexpected.
Could we slide back down, because I'm on half a table?
Yeah, everyone get a sip of water.
This is like our.
It's all right, that's the second grade that this has happened, that's happened.
Halftime show, so. Oh my gosh. Anyway, just let us know when you're ready, Councilmember.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you, appreciate it, gentlemen. Yes, I'm ready, thank you. I want to raise a few things that I haven't yet heard mentioned. When you have a 2-income family and you have kids and somebody gets sick, an elder, a child, you really find yourself at odds. So for this reason, in terms of the question of bringing down the cost of living, my mind goes to what do families need by way of support? We had this incredible child tax credit during COVID that was then rescinded as we came back to normal. We need to reinstate that child tax credit. It puts actual dollars in the hands of people who need it most. We need federally funded universal child care. That's going to greatly help with the cost of living for families with children, and we need paid family leave. I'm also in favor of universal basic income. A few more dollars in everybody's pocket will help.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Bernstein.
Yeah, as I've been out knocking on doors, I've continued to this question comes up again and again, affordability. I was speaking to Allison yesterday in Palo Alto, and just recognizing how when it comes to childcare, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to housing, costs are continuing to rise, and they're rising at levels that are way faster than the overall economy's inflation. So how do we fix this? We need to first ensure that we can build more housing here. I cannot afford to live anywhere from any place that I can walk to from my front doorstep, and that needs to change. It needs to change that when I go to the hospital to get ibuprofen, it costs $1,000. There are easy fixes that we can do that are the big pockets of money to start with, and let's start there.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. And last up, Mayor Ohtaki.
There are two big solutions that the federal government can assist. One is to work on this, the federal budget, and reduce the deficit. We have 33 trillion of accumulated debt. That was 16 trillion before the last two administrations. So you can, it's just become an astronomical amount. Well, where did that money go? Well, you've seen it all through the supply chains. A bag of groceries now is over $100. You know, you see it in every way. The other area is housing. I was the first mayor to pass a housing element in 20 years. We have thousands of apartments that are now built because of it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Now let's move on to foreign policy. Candidates, you will have 45 seconds to answer the following questions. How would you address concerns about the intellectual property theft and cybersecurity threats originating from Russia, China, and other U.S. adversaries, especially given the importance of technology in this district? You will have 45 seconds.
Mr. Mostafa, you're up.
Yeah, we need a global tech treaty to deal with everything from AI to global data protections. Right now, our countries follow GDPR, and our biggest companies follow that standard when it comes to data. But what we need to do is ensure that we have a global standard for AI, for data. And you know who should lead on that? Silicon Valley. We are the birthplace of modern day innovation, and we should be taking the lead on these issues. As somebody who has handled these issues at the biggest tech company at Google, I know exactly how to mitigate the harms of AI on a global level. I know how to actually add data protections on a global level, and as well as AI and intellectual property theft. We need to handle this globally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mostafa. Councilmember.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, just to make sure we did it fully.
Yes, of course. So the question is, how would you address concerns about the intellectual property theft and cybersecurity threats that originate from Russia, China, and other U.S. adversaries?
Councilmember Tanaka.
It's a great question. Intellectual property, especially for this area, Silicon Valley, is critical. My last startup had an office in Shenzhen, so I know quite a bit about China, and there's definitely theft going on. What we need to do is make sure that there's actually fair treatment of IP, so China IP and US IP needs to be treated the same. And the other really big issue is that we have policies right now that actually encourage companies to move their IP overseas for tax purposes. So that's another big issue. So we need to first make sure that we have bilateral treaties with other countries to make sure that IP is treated fairly and that we pursue theft and IP violations across different countries, and we help companies do that because it's very expensive to do IP litigation. And then we also need to make sure that we change the current laws that discourage people from keeping IP in this country for tax reasons.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lythcott-Haims.
I'm going to open by saying I don't know a lot about this, and I think it's okay to acknowledge that. It's an important question, it's an interesting question. I haven't had to think about it in a long time, being a council member in Palo Alto. But here's what I will say. I was an intellectual property lawyer at Cooley Godward here in Silicon Valley in the late 90s when the internet was just being commercialized. I protected trademarks, copyrights, and patents as a young associate. And I was in-house counsel at Intel for a while. So it's just been a while for me since I focused on these issues. The last thing I'll add is I'm an author, and my book, right now, one of my 3 books, is used to train AI without my consent. And so I'm deeply interested in how we solve this problem.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Bernstein.
I think it's apparent there are bad actors in this world. There are actors that actively seek to steal U.S. property, steal our IP theft, and steal the fantastic innovation that comes from this district. I am currently a student at Stanford Business School. All of my friends are trying to launch these amazing startups, and one of their biggest fears is it's not always fundraising, it's not worrying about go-to-market and customer fit, it's worrying about who in China is going to steal their product, reproduce it, and ship it back here at much lower costs. We need to be actively paying attention to this issue. It is not talked about enough in DC, but it's one that deserves a lot more strength and a lot more force in order to protect the innovation coming out of here.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Mayor Ohtaki.
So IP theft is one of the biggest threats that we have right now. American companies get lured to establish an operation in China, the Chinese government will say, we'll give you some funding, and then they're there for about a year, and there's this rob and replicate practice where basically hackers from the Chinese government will then steal the IP and will set up a new company that puts the American company out of business. It happens time and time again. And that's got to stop, and it has to be through negotiation. And cybersecurity is also a similar thing. We've got to go after the hackers in cyberspace.
Thank you, Mayor. Major Dixon?
It's not Russia, it's not Iran, it's China and the Chinese Communist Party. And their intellectual property theft using cyber means is the largest transfer of wealth in human history. The nonprofit that I co-founded helped pass legislation to establish the position of the cybersecurity coordinator that's doing exactly what was suggested, of coordinating on a global basis cybersecurity pacts and treaties to enforce this. And that's currently occupied by Nate Fick. I was a cybersecurity founder of a company. This is something that I understand well. And I was a national security official, and one of the things that I did was coordinate the intelligence community's response to the whole-scale theft of property, of IP, from this region.
Thank you, Major.
Thank you.
So, candidates, for our next question. You have 45 seconds to answer the following question. What actions would you take in Congress to ensure that American strategic interests in the Pacific are prioritized? Again, 45 seconds.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, of course. What actions would you take in Congress to ensure that American strategic interests in the Pacific are prioritized? Remember, 5-second grace period, and then we'll cut you off. Councilmember Tanaka, you're up.
Yeah, so I used to be in the semiconductor industry. I used to be a chip designer. And, you know, Silicon Valley is called Silicon Valley because of the chips. And, you know, we don't manufacture chips anymore. Most of the advanced semiconductors are manufactured in Taiwan, TSMC. And just about every device in our room is manufactured by Taiwan. And so making sure that Taiwan is safe, that they're able to continue to produce the semiconductors that our economy needs is critical. So what we need to do is really a concerted effort to onshore the manufacturing of advanced geometries, advanced lithography in our country. That's absolutely critical. Without that, our technology, our AI, our startups will all be choked off.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lythcott-Haims.
I will add to my colleagues' comments. Greg and I serve on the city council together. That absolutely China's aggression and sort of flagrant violation of international law has to be curbed. I'm proud of President Biden for the CHIPS Act. You know, the CHIPS Act is there to ensure that we are bringing this manufacturing back in-house, and that was, you know, really groundbreaking and essential. I note that NVIDIA, I think today, just announced record revenue, and clearly has established itself as the leading chip maker around AI. And so it is critical that we protect Taiwanese companies from any aggression perpetrated by China.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Bernstein.
Yeah, protecting the chips are important, but the consequences here can be a lot larger. If you look at Ukraine, a majority of Russian citizens do not believe that Ukraine is their territory. If you ask Chinese citizens, though, do they believe that they own the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea, have a right over Taiwan? Majority say yes. This is something that Xi Jinping does have an electoral mandate to kind of focus on. It is a large geopolitical concern that needs to be actively we need to actively pay attention to this and be able to support our ally of Taiwan.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Mayor Ohtaki.
So we must support Taiwan's independence. We must, and part of it is certainly the 60% of the semiconductors are manufactured in Taiwan. We need to be able to ensure that semiconductors are built domestically as well, but more importantly, it's a freedom-loving democracy that we need to certainly support, and we can do that in partnership with countries like Japan and South Korea and Australia, and the Philippines, all who have a common goal in seeking free trade routes throughout the Pacific. That's a role that we can play and lead as the United States.
Thank you, Mayor. Major Dixon.
We have to transform our defense spend in this country. How we spend money on defense, it's $150 billion, more than everything else combined. 94% of that going into weapons programs fails. It never gets to the troops. If we introduce American competition into this with companies that are coming from the district, take for instance what SpaceX did for pennies on the dollar versus the traditional defense companies. This is what needs to happen, and then sharing that technology with Taiwan will effectively deter a Chinese attack across the straits so that we do not end up in a hot war. This is critical that we do this in the next 2 years.
Thank you, Major. Mr. Mostafa.
We must protect our allies and we protect Taiwan, not because of economic components, not because of just semiconductors, but primarily because of human rights and protecting individual liberties, which we respect in Taiwan. It's not just a matter of an economic question. It's a matter of standing on the right thing and ensuring that when countries go annex other individual other parts of other countries, we don't just stand for violations of international law over and over again. And I think that is the main reason why we need to protect our main interests, because it's a human rights issue. And it's our ally that is a democratic ally.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mostafa.
Okay, candidates, you will have 45 seconds to answer the following question. How do you propose that there is a peaceful resolution reached in the current conflict between Israel and Palestine in the Gaza Strip? You will have 45 seconds to answer.
For months now, I have been calling for a bilateral humanitarian ceasefire. I want the hostages returned. I want Hamas to be taken out of the picture. Terrorists should not be negotiating any piece of this. The people of Gaza are suffering. The Netanyahu government has rained its retaliation upon innocent civilians. So I'm in anguish over what Jews and others in Israel experienced on October 7th, and I'm in anguish over what's happened to the people of Gaza. And I call for a bilateral humanitarian ceasefire because all parties must set down their weapons. I'm in favor of a two-state solution, self-determination for all people in the region, and America and other nations, perhaps Rwanda, South Africa, can help us achieve this diplomatic peace that ultimately is desperately needed in the region.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Bernstein.
Pretty tough issue to answer in 45 seconds. My three priorities here. First priority, hostages. Been held for 138 days, 120 hostages who were taken from their homes, from their beds, from their communities into Gaza. It is time to bring them home today. Number two, humanitarian aid. We are seeing a complete breakdown in ability to distribute aid right now in Gaza through Rafah in the north. We need to ensure that we can get more resources, medicine, food, shelter into Gaza immediately. And then third, it is time to eradicate Hamas, an organization that has genocidal ambitions to eradicate all Jews. And as a Jew, it's just something that, imagine if Hamas was a block away from us across the bay, obviously we'd be fighting to ensure that we could eradicate Hamas today.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Mayor Ohtaki.
The loss of innocent Israeli and Palestinian lives are a tragedy. There's no question about that. What we also have to keep in mind is who's behind this. And we have to remember the geopolitical realities of the fact that Iran is the bully in the region that is the most repressive regime, that has funded all of the terrorist proxies surrounding Israel and threatening Israel. They constantly, every protest is death to America, death to Israel, right? And Israel has made peace with many of its neighbors. The U.S. can act as a deterrent to keep this war from spreading and to keep Iran in check.
Thank you, Mayor. Major Dixon.
I served in the State Department under Hillary Clinton. I served in the Pentagon during the Obama administration. I was a Marine. I served in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've had responsibility for the welfare of the people in a Palestinian refugee camp in Iraq. I've also served alongside Israeli Defense Forces in exchanging best practices to deter terrorism. So I have a fair amount of background in this. Anybody who says that there are simple answers here is generally out of their depth. However, it's pretty simple right now, where we have about a 2-week period where the wing of the political wing of Hamas is at the table because of the pressure from the IDF. It's now time for Benjamin Netanyahu to get serious about bringing the hostages home and to negotiate an end to this. It's 2 weeks to get this done. It has to get done now.
Thank you, Major. Mr. Mostafa.
We need an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. We must think about the Israeli and Palestinian children, and no child should be able to have to wake up and try to figure out how to navigate their lives without a parent. They should be worried about homework and what their stresses are, and like, who's my crush at school tomorrow? Not these very serious, questions about how am I going to live my life? That's how we end the cycle of hatred. It's how we've actually gotten the hostages home, is through these humanitarian pauses. A ceasefire now is the way to create permanent peace in the region.
Thank you, Mr. Mostafa. Councilmember Tanaka.
Yeah, this is a very thorny issue. There are really no easy answers. I think the long-term answer has to be a two-state solution. One where Israel is guaranteed security, because Israel can't be in a place where the rockets being locked into their city like every other day. And then the people of Palestine also need a place, right? They can't be living in a kind of an area where they can't control their own destiny. So I think both have to happen. If both don't happen, we're going to have the same issue again and again and again. So it's critical that we resolve the fundamental issues, because any kind of temporary solution is not going to work unless these issues are resolved. I think the Abraham Accords was something that was looking promising, and probably we should probably try to push those forward again.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Now we will move on to the lightning round. Candidates will be asked yes or no questions to which they will respond by holding up the cards on their table. A green card represents yes, a red represents no, and a yellow represents a neutral stance or no position being taken. Please keep your cards lifted until the moderator tells you to put them down. We'll begin now.
Any questions from candidates about this?
Is it going to be like 1, 2, 3, lift?
As quickly as you can think of.
It's like Jeopardy. We have
Okay.
we'll have the buttons.
Ring the truck.
Can you repeat the question? Give us a chance.
Of course. We'll repeat each question twice, and then as fast as you can
Okay.
after the second question. So, first, yes or no, would you support ongoing funding for Ukraine? Again, would you support ongoing funding for Ukraine? Thank you, candidates. I'm going to put it down.
Would you support breaking up tech monopolies, especially social media companies? Again, that is, would you support breaking up tech monopolies, especially social media companies?
Thank you. Yes or no? Are you in favor of increasing the minimum wage at the federal level? Thank you.
Would you be willing to vote against your own party if you believe it aligns best with the interests of this district?
Do you believe Congress is justified in spending money it doesn't have in order to meet policy priorities? Again, do you believe Congress is justified in spending money it doesn't have in order to meet policy priorities? Thank you.
Yes or no? Do you advocate for increased funding to strengthen border security measures to address immigration concerns?
Thank you. Would you support comprehensive immigration reform that includes a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants already in the United States? Again, would you support comprehensive immigration reform that includes a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants already in the United States? I need you twice. Thank you.
Would you have voted for the immigration bill that failed to become law earlier this year? Again, that is, would you have voted for the immigration bill that had failed to become law earlier this year?
Thank you. Should foreign nationals, as individuals, be allowed to buy land in the United States? Again, should foreign nationals, as individuals, be allowed to buy land in the United States? Thank you.
Should foreign nations, as sovereign states, be allowed to buy land in the United States? That is again, should foreign nations, as in sovereign states, be allowed to buy land in the US?
Thank you. Do you believe that offshore manufacturing of goods is beneficial to the United States? Again, do you believe that offshore manufacturing of goods is beneficial to the United States? Thank you.
Do you support renewable energy products or projects at the federal level? Again, that is, do you support renewable energy projects at the federal level?
Thank you. Do you support nuclear energy projects at the federal level? Again, do you support nuclear energy projects at the federal level? Thank you.
Do you think Congress should raise corporate taxes? Again, that is, do you think Congress should raise corporate taxes?
Thank you. Are you in favor of increasing taxes on the wealthy to fund social programs and infrastructure? Again, are you in favor of increasing taxes on the wealthy to fund social programs and infrastructure? Thank you.
Final question. Are you in favor of cutting taxes on the middle class? Again, that is, are you in favor of cutting taxes on the middle class? Thank you. Well, that will be concluding our lightning round. Congresswoman Eshoo has had one of the longest lasting student advisory boards in Congress, where high school students are able to voice their opinions on policies to her and her office. How do you plan on ensuring that the young people of this district are heard and represented in Congress should you be elected? You will have 45 seconds.
And we will start with Mr. Bernstein.
I started the last one, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Councilmember.
What Anna has done for high school students is amazing. I would plan to definitely continue that going forward. I'm someone who in high school, I led my high school's model congress in Maui UN. Getting involved in politics at an early age is what inspired me to run today. And I want to ensure that all students can reach for that dream and know that like anything is possible when it comes to getting involved in government, because it is in government where we're going to fix the biggest problems of today and solve our crises for tomorrow. And so ensuring that all students are ready to fight and stand up as a next generation will ensure that we'll have a better America.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Mayor Ohtaki.
Yeah, there's no question that I think it's important to continue to make sure that that high school students have input into the federal government through the congressional representatives. In addition, I would love to be able to do town halls with high school students and make sure that I'm sharing with the students all that's happening at the federal level and also from both sides, and making sure that students, high school students, are well informed when they make a decision, because they're going to vote in a couple of years. So.
Thank you, Mayor. Major Dixon.
We all need to stand up. Even if you're in high school or college, you need to figure out how to stand up now to address the problems that we are going to be dealing with for the rest of our lives. And I just want to congratulate you again on doing exactly that. One of the things that I want to push is not just the ability to talk about these problems, but to be part of the solution. And I would take money from the defense spend and I would double the opportunities for uniform public service, not just in the military, but in NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is our climate force, the Uniform Public Health Corps, and the Army Corps of Engineers. These are the forces that deal with not only epidemics, but also deal with the climate collapse that we are facing as a community.
Thank you, Major. Mr. Mostafa.
You are our future. And as such, we must continue these student advisory boards, but do even more, go beyond that. We must invest in you and tell you that you should be continuing to get civically involved. We must build pathways for your opinion and your voice to be heard. And why is that? That's because not only will you continue the solutions that we bring to the table, but you also have to face the repercussions of the bad policies and problems that we create, such as the climate change issues that we are seeing every single day. So I would continue to build your involvement, to get your opinions heard, and to get you actively involved, no matter where you are on what issue, because you are our future.
Thank you, Mr. Mostafa. Councilmember Tanaka.
Yeah, so I've been a Palo Alto City Council member for 7 years now, and I was the first to actually start having high school interns as part of my team. And so over that 7 years, I've had about 130 students, and so many of them told me that this has been the best experience ever in high school. Some of them have switched from being STEM majors to poli-sci majors and aspired to actually run for office one day. And I think it's really important to get younger people involved, because if you look at true voters in our country, whether it's here, anywhere, federal, local, it doesn't matter. It's really the older people. It's really the older people who attend meetings, who attend council meetings, who attend congressional meetings. But the decision we're making today as electeds is actually for the younger people. And so we need that representation, we need that perspective.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lythcott-Haims.
Absolutely. In my role as a freshman dean at Stanford, I met regularly with a group of 45 of them just to stay informed about what the concerns and experiences of the freshmen were. It was incredibly valuable. I am on our Palo Alto City Council, the liaison to the Palo Alto Youth Council, a set of youth that are coming up with various policy issues and raising concerns, and I'm the person that gets to listen to them on a regular basis. I'm also the mom of a 24-year-old and a 22-year-old, and they are constantly teaching me, constantly. So, look, youth perspective is essential. I want to ensure that youth are involved in the office. If I'm the office holder, I want them to learn. I also want to learn from them. I want to be sure our pages and interns are not drawn from the elite. I will make sure that pages and interns are broadly representative of this district.
Thank you, Councilmember. Now, let's move on to Social Security. Candidates, you will have 45 seconds to address the following question. How do you propose we tackle the long-term sustainability of Social Security in the face of an aging population, and how would you address potential funding gaps? Mayor Ohtaki, you're first.
So the Social Security Trust Fund will be unable to meet its obligations, and estimates range from anywhere from 5 to 10 years because of the baby boom generation that exceeds the younger generations that pay into Social Security. So it's a dilemma and an issue. One of the first things we can do to address that is, right now the Social Security Trust Fund basically is invested in U.S. Treasury securities. High-grade corporate bonds will yield another at least % on top of that, which would at least allow the trust fund to go longer. Most pension funds are at least in some sort of corporate or other equity securities that yield higher. That's certainly first, and then got to adjust the benefits. So, thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you. Major Dixon.
It's tremendously important that this isn't gutted, that this is preserved and strengthened. This is something that folks have paid into for a long time, but we have to figure out how to modernize it and update it. And so looking at things like how do we, for the tax that supports it, right now over a certain amount of income, you don't get taxed on that. There are different issues, a means test. There are different issues that we need to look at that are common sense modernization methods for this that most people agree on. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is healthcare is just too expensive in the United States. Whether it's individuals paying for it or whether it's the government paying for it, we need to increase dramatically the number of healthcare providers so that it drives down the cost. It's supply and demand.
Thank you, Major. Mr. Mostafa.
Yeah, we must keep the benefits that people have been paying for their whole lives, so when they receive them, that they actually get them. And there's a number of ways we can do this. Number one, we must ensure that our wealthy are paying their fair share. And there's a number of ways we could do this. Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax is one way. We also must reform the tax code such that people who are taking loans on their capital gains actually end up paying their fair share. And there's a multitude of ways we can do this. We could stop spending on wars overseas, millions and millions of dollars, if not billions. And so we need to invest in our people. And that is what we got to do at the end of the day. And we can do this, and we will.
Thank you, Mr. Mostafa. Councilmember Tanaka.
So I think the math is really clear on this one. Social Security is basically bankrupt, so it's a ticking time bomb. And there's really three ways we can do this. One way that some countries have done is to raise the age. So people are living a lot longer. But someone was, 65 when Social Security started, people died at 65. Now people live to 100. So the other thing is moving to defined contributions versus defined benefits. That would also help alleviate the issue. And third one, which is, to me, I think probably the easiest one, is to actually earn much better yield. Right now, Social Security, the yield that we get on it, the way the money's invested is not great, right? If you say you do a sovereign wealth fund, to act as an LP listed for venture funds, as an example, that's one way to actually increase the yield of Social Security, make it solvent.
Thank you, Councilmember Haims.
Thank you. I think the question was, what is our long-term plan to sustain Social Security? So I'm going to stay specific to that. I am not thrilled about raising the age of eligibility because people have structured their lives around the expectation that they can retire at a certain age with a certain defined benefit. And so I just worry about the people kind of caught up in that when that transition is made. Provisions would have to be made. It would have to be done slowly and as fairly as possible. I'm also not thrilled about the means test because I think when you pay into something for decades and then you discover at the end you're actually not going to get anything because you've earned, in excess. I am in favor of raising the wage cap, which is currently $160,000. We should raise it to $200,000, even $250,000, even higher. Wealthy people can afford to pay more.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Bernstein.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question to really get a policy walkout on. Social Security right now is 21% of the federal budget. It's not really a large fund that exists out there, it's purely a transfer payment that goes every single time that your taxes go in, it gets paid out almost immediately. The things that need to get done right now to fix it can be solved. Most economists have pretty good ideas on how to get it done fast. If we raise the age by 1 to 2 years, it would eliminate the deficit in Social Security. If you made the payments be CPI chain linked, it would also fix, extend the crunch out another 10 years. Talking about like the wage cap, actually I don't think we need individuals to pay more, but employers could pay more, especially larger employers. And ensuring that that wage cap is risen would push out Social Security further. So it's an easy fix that can get done.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein.
Let's move on to our final section of policy questions, which are those related to tech. These are especially important given that if elected, you'll be representing what might be called the Tech District of America. Candidates, you will have 45 seconds to answer the following questions. In light of recent concerns about data privacy and user protection, what measures would you propose to regulate and safeguard the personal information of Silicon Valley residents without stifling technological innovation?
Major Dixon, you're first.
This is something that we all need to grapple with, especially as the AI revolution takes hold and our data, our identities, our images are potentially mined. We've all seen what's happened, I think, with Taylor Swift, and that's one example that's been happening for years in terms of her images being used in a really horrific way. And so we need much stronger safeguards around making sure that we stay at the center of the AI revolution that's coming, and our data, our rights, our images are fundamentally protected. We should be leading the way in that as Silicon Valley. Even in my launch video, I used AI. This is something that our generation knows how to leverage, knows how to embrace, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do it.
Thank you, Major. Mr. Mostafa.
Yeah, like I said, we need a global tech treaty. Right now, we follow the European GDPR. California has COPPA, but that's not enough. We need something that is global because what ends up happening is when we do some things that are more localized, tech companies don't comply and they say we pull out of these regions. So for example, look at Canadian election ads. Google has pulled out of Canadian election ads. And we need something strong, and we need something to ensure that our data is protected. And we need to implement safeguards that are in place such that people don't abuse and these companies don't abuse our data. People are being outed for their LGBTQ by personalized advertising. All of a sudden someone goes on their son's computer and they see a bunch of ads. That should never happen.
Thank you, Mr. Mostafa. Councilmember Tanaka.
Yeah, so I think first of all, I think it's important that we protect Section 230. So I have a section on my website about Section 230, so that we can continue to have an innovation economy. So I think that's really important. But at the same time, I think we need to also have enforcement. So a lot of people have terms of service on their website. A lot of times it's violated, and there's not enforcement in terms of making sure that they're complying. And I think the other thing that's really important is disclosure. So a lot of times you're trying to get onto a website, you're trying to do something, and you have this massive wall of text that you're supposed to read before you go to your favorite video. And we need to make sure the disclosure is a lot better so that people actually know what they're signing up for, because that's a part of the problem. So I think those two things, enforcement plus disclosure, will solve a lot of the problems.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lythcott-Haims.
Yeah, I'll start by saying I served on the board of Common Sense Media here in the Bay Area. This organization is really helping parents make good choices about what types of media, software, games, etc. their kids should use at various ages, all geared toward protecting children from harm. So I think children are a clear population that we've really got to focus on, and I think most people can get on board with the fact that children should not be harmed when they're, trying to get information or connect with their friends on Instagram. I think we have to ask ourselves, what did we learn from Instagram that we can now deploy to the learnings for how to regulate AI? It's critical that our regulations not stifle innovation. People are in favor of the GDPR, but that's something large companies can handle. It's a web of regulation that people say has actually stifled innovation. So it's innovation with proper guidelines, and I think the ethicists here in Silicon Valley could form a roundtable to really make these decisions. I'm sorry, not going on too long. A roundtable of ethicists. It was drawn from here.
Mr. Bernstein.
Yeah, I think both Greg and Julie hit on really key 2 important points. What Greg was talking about, a lot of that's seen in the PACT Act, an idea that Brian Chas, Senator from Hawaii, has brought up, and really trying to ensure we have more enforcement and disclosure and holding large tech accountable to ensure that content can be moderated and removed when necessary. The second thing, protecting our children. The state of Utah is actually taking the lead here with SB 2. It is time to bring SB 2 to a national level and ensuring that parents can have some control over what access their children have to online material.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Mayor Ohtaki.
Yeah, I certainly agree with everything that's been said about privacy protection for individuals and particularly for children. And what I'd like to add is that we have to keep in mind what that data is being used for, and one of the issues that I'm very concerned about is algorithms, right? The algorithms have polarized your news feeds, you see it, and it has contributed to the polarization that we see in our country. So we need to be able to regulate those algorithms in a way that encourages people get news sources from a variety of sources, and also AI, to make sure AI doesn't have that same bias built into it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Candidates will have 45 seconds to answer the following question. Why do you believe that you are the best suited to represent Silicon Valley in Congress?
Is this our close? Or is there a close also?
There's a close.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Mostafa.
Yeah, I'm not a career politician. I've actually spent my entire life serving people. From when I was an undergrad and a student leader, a student body vice president and student body president, and turning a red district blue by registering the most students to vote in the entire nation, to working in the classroom as a teacher, to starting my own clinic for survivors of sexual violence, to being the only one on this stage with tech policy experience writing policies to mitigate the harms of AI in elections integrity, hate speech, and misinformation. I have devoted my entire life to people, and that is how I see this. I am going to work in Congress for you, the people.
Thank you, Mr. Mostafa. Councilmember Tanaka.
So Silicon Valley is a place of dreams. This is where entrepreneurs start amazing companies, amazing businesses, amazing technologies. And I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done this for many, many years. But not only am I an entrepreneur, I'm also an experienced legislator. I've been on Palo Alto City Council for 7 years now. I'm on my 8th year right now. And so I think I'm the only one with both tech experience, entrepreneurship experience, as well as holding office. And the other thing that's very unique about me, and you guys can tell from all the cards you've been holding up, is that I tend to be very independent. So some people say that they'll go against the party, but for me, I'll look at what's best for the people that I represent, and I'll vote for them versus what benefits me in terms of my party. And a lot of people will vote for the party because that's the only way they can get, a certain committee or chair.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lythcott-Haims.
I think it's interesting that no one has yet asked a question about reproductive freedom. If you ask the women of Silicon Valley what issue matters most to them right now, it is the fact that Roe versus Wade has been overturned and this dystopian novel, The Handmaid's Tale, is becoming reality in parts of America. So I'm best suited to represent Silicon Valley in this American moment because I'm the only one up here who has had a terrifying call from my OBGYN saying something might be wrong with the fetus I'm carrying. I think everyone up here is pro-choice, which I respect, but it's different when it's personal and when you've lived it personally within your own body. I'm also not a career politician, and frankly, I think we have to hold our career politicians accountable for the lack of housing in this region.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Bernstein.
I wasn't lucky enough to be born here, but it is my chosen home. You will way too often see me biking on Skyline, hiking in Arroyo, mountain biking, even up in Pacifica, part of the district on Sweeney Trail. I love the Palo Altos Farmers Market. I love the entire community and our neighborhoods, and it is a district that I am dedicated to, devoted to, and focused on ensuring that we can have the best future here, because it's the community that I love. And it is a place, this country, that we face existential crises in climate change, in education, in immigration. I'm the candidate who has worked in businesses, has worked in the policy, has worked on the Hill, has led climate startups, has led corporate sustainability programs. We need to have effective leaders who have worked across the aisle and have also worked in business to get stuff done, and I'm the candidate who can do it.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Mayor Ohtaki.
In my 8 years at the Menlo Park City Council, I'm very proud to have had bipartisan leadership experience. There were 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and we solved a lot of the major issues facing Menlo Park, ranging from community-oriented policing and addressing crime, as well as being the first mayor to get our housing element passed in over 20 years and building thousands of apartments, as I mentioned earlier. Support small business. I was a co-founder and CFO of a tech startup and a nonprofit. I work for a national security think tank and have foreign policy experience, homeland security, infrastructure plan background, and I have an economics degree from Harvard and a MBA in finance from Stanford. So,
thank you, Mayor. Major Dixon.
The next member of Congress for Silicon Valley should have lived the Silicon Valley experience and should be able to fight to make sure that that experience doesn't die, because it's being threatened right now. It's being threatened by the lack of immigration to this area. It's being threatened by the cost of living to this immigration. At the State Department, I leverage technology to combat violence against women in the Democratic Republic of Congo and to fight against cartel violence in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. At the Pentagon, I brought tens of millions of dollars that was otherwise, frankly, being wasted back here to the district. I built a tech company here. But I'm raising my family here, and I want to make sure that this entire next generation is able to experience the dream of not just America, but the dream of Silicon Valley.
Okay. Thank you all for all your answers. That concludes our policy-intensive questions. Now, to finish off on the debate, we'll put all the candidates on the hot seat. We'll be asking you answer a question that we may believe that may stop voters from circling your name on the ballot. This is your chance to debunk criticism and to convince citizens of this district to vote for you. You may use this time as your concluding statement. Candidates will have 60 seconds.
Mr. Bernstein, you are the youngest candidate running in this race and are currently pursuing your MBA and MS in climate science at Stanford. What would you say to voters who are concerned about your age and what they could interpret as a lack of professional experience? We'll have 1 minute.
Alexander Hamilton was 21 years old when the Declaration of Independence was signed, and James Madison was 25 years old. The Constitution itself was written by our founding fathers, who were not old men, they were mostly in their 30s. Throughout American history, each new generation has risen to the challenges. Whether it was to fight world wars or overcome polio, we have done it. And for all those, oftentimes when talking to young people, it's sad. Too often you hear people say that it's time to throw in the towel on American democracy. We have too many challenges to overcome. But I myself am motivated more than ever. And I'm going to work to fix the problem. No matter who is in the White House, no matter who is in the speaker chair, I will fight for this district and fight for change. That is my commitment and promise to you. When I see a wrong or a problem, I do something about it. Rather than leaning back and criticizing the way things are, I fight to make sure the way that things should be. I'm Joby Bernstein, I'm running for Congress, and I'm running for you.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Major Dixon, you spent the most on television ads in this race, and yet no polls show you advancing to the general election. While polls certainly aren't always accurate, what would you say to those who see this as a lack of enthusiasm and support for your candidacy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so first of all, I just want to thank everybody who's put this together. You know, hard questions, tough questions, interesting questions. I think some of the best that we've seen out of any debate. And so huge congratulations to you guys and to everybody who's helped you put this together. So this is a very short sprint. For those of us who have been lifelong public servants, but have not been lifelong politicians, we're going from 0 name ID to trying to get into the general in a very short amount of time. And so that's certainly what our campaign has been doing. Frankly, it's a lot like building a startup at maybe 3 times the speed. And so I'm extremely proud of the team that's come together to do that. And I'm really proud of the community. When you do this, it's almost like jumping out of a tree or something. Your heart's in your throat. And having the community step forward and just be around us as we do this, it's tremendously rewarding. And the biggest poll we're about to see, which is in the next week, I have something very specific to offer the people of this district in terms of my ability to deliver, and I'm counting on the voters to see that here in a little over a week. Thank you.
Thank you, Major.
Councilmember Lythcott-Haims, one of your campaign priorities has been to bring down the cost of living. However, during your time on the Palo Alto City Council, prices, especially for homes, have gone up significantly. Neither you nor the council are the sole reason for this, but as an elected official, you do bear some responsibility. How do you reassure voters that as a member of Congress, you'll be able to make their lives more affordable?
Well, the reason the prices are so high in Palo Alto is we don't have enough supply. We still have plenty of people in Palo Alto who'd like to keep Palo Alto as it is rather than make room for more people. I've been actively fighting that every single day as an elected and prior. And as we've all acknowledged, housing is the top issue of concern here in the region. So look, what I can tell you is I've been out there meeting with voters. I've been out there meeting with constituents, helping people learn about why building more housing is not a scary thing, but a way to really address so many problems. And so I will continue to be that person. Actually, in having gone out and talked to the community about this, holding forums, bringing in authors to talk about the historic, systemic nature of segregation around zoning, like that's the kind of person I am. Educate the electorate and trust that they will make the smart and wise decisions. And we are seeing that happen in Palo Alto. Voters are increasingly willing to raise the heights and increase the density and welcome more housing to Palo Alto. So change is afoot in Palo Alto, and when I'm in Congress, change will be further afoot with my help.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Mostafa, tomorrow you'll be hosting a fundraiser with Congressman Jamal Bowman of New York, a member of the Progressive Squad. Leadership Connect did an analysis that found out that members of the squad are at the bottom of the most effective folks in the Democratic caucus, based on factors such as sponsoring bills and actually seeing them passed into law. If elected to Congress, will you be a member of the squad? And if so, how do you reassure voters that you'll actually pass legislation that will help our district?
Yeah, if allowed into the squad, I would be a member of the squad, and I would ensure that we focus our issues and priorities on people. A lot of times, many members of Congress, and this isn't a criticism of any certain or progressive group, our elected officials sometimes preach to their districts, but they're not preaching to the nation. And that is something that I promise to do. When we talk about healthcare for all, I want to talk not just to the people here in the Bay Area, I want to talk to the people in Oklahoma who are almost completely dependent on the health care that the government provides. I want to talk to every individual and talk about common sense solutions. When I talk about a Green New Deal, I want to talk about how it helps you, the average American, and how we are going to see and succeed while we push together. If we use terminologies that are very partisan, that is how we don't get things done. But I want to preach the entire country, and that's how we will pass legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Mostafa.
Mr. Ohtaki, you are a Republican running in a very blue district. You statistically need Democratic voters to cross party lines to vote for you in order to win this seat. If you are not an extreme conservative, you winning the seat will get Mike Johnson, one of the most conservative House speakers in modern American history, one vote closer to staying as Speaker for the next 2 years in a divided Congress where every vote counts. How do you win the votes of residents who'd like to see a change in the party that their representative in Congress is a member of, but don't want an extension of the Johnson speakership? You have 90 seconds. 60
It's
seconds.
not a surprise of a question, and I get that all about every debate. So let me explain why I am a Republican. I've been a long time Republican. I believe in fiscal responsibility. I want to keep my communities safe. I want to keep our nation secure. And I also want to make sure that you all have the same opportunity here in Silicon Valley that I had when I grew up here. And I think that's really important, and I think that's also what a lot of people here want as well. This district is over 33% no party preference. It means people who have left both parties because they've been disillusioned with the two parties. And across the country, we have the sensible middle that really doesn't have a voice in Congress. So my role will be to be on the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is 64 Democratic and Republican members, and try and reach compromise in legislation.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Tanaka, you are the only Democratic candidate on this stage that has challenged Democratic Congressman Ahmed in the past. You got 6.6% of the vote. All other Democratic candidates here have heaped praise on Congresswoman Eshu and her work in the House, and she's consistently won elections in this district. What do you oppose about Congresswoman Eshu's work, and how will you convince voters to that voted against you in 2022 to vote for you this year?
Yeah, good question. So, when I ran last time against Eshu, one of the big issues I had was that she was trying to ban recommendation engines. I don't know if you guys follow this, but recommendation engines is if you go to Amazon, it says, you bought this product, we recommend you buy this other product. It's a fundamental core technology of the internet. It's used on TikTok, it's used on YouTube, it's used just about everywhere. And the big issue I have is that we're Silicon Valley. This is a place of technology. So much of our economy runs on technology. And when we have someone that doesn't understand technology, something that's fundamental to the recommendation engine, which is pretty much everyone here uses it multiple times a day easily, and someone that wants to ban it, to call it a dangerous algorithm, to me it shows a lack of understanding of our technology. It shows that they want to undermine the underpinnings of our society, of Silicon Valley. So for me, this is why I think it's really important that we have a technologist that understands technology representing Silicon Valley. When we have someone that's representing Silicon Valley that doesn't understand startups, doesn't understand the ecosystem, I think we're going to be in trouble.
Thank you, Councilmember. And thank you all candidates. That concludes our 2024 16th Congressional District Primary Candidates Forum.
To everyone here live or watching online, make sure you vote by March 5th in this crucial primary election and visit losaltosinstitution.org to learn more about the work being done by us and other fellow students. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.